Hi, my name is Adam Greenfader. I'm the managing partner of AG&T, and I have the pleasure of being with Francisco Luis, who's partner at Kevane Grant Thornton. How's it going, Francisco?
Excellent. Stay on healthy, Adam. Thank you.
Good, good. I like the quarantine look that you've got going on there.
Yeah, I have close to 30 years of experience. Most of my time I deal with tax consulting matters, and most of those consulting matters are with specifically with the Puerto Rico tax incentives. Point out, in 2017, we have two new big players in the U.S. international tax arena. Those are the BEAT and the GILTI. The BEAT stands for the Base Erosion Anti-Abuse Tax, and the GILTI for the Global Intangible Low Tax Income, in essence. And that basically destroy Puerto Rico's strategy with the incentives because, for example, most of the incentives in Puerto Rico grant you a 4% flat tax in Puerto Rico. But if the owner of that entity doing business in Puerto Rico is a U.S. shareholder, Puerto Rico can give you a 0% tax, but it's going to be a flow through to the U.S. and the U.S. will impose a tax on that income that the foreign corporation is being earned. However, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, is a U.S. possession. And as part of the lobby efforts when the tax reform was made is that Puerto Rico employs U.S. citizens because we are U.S. citizens here in Puerto Rico. And right now we don't have a distinction about a foreign corporation that is engaged in a business in Puerto Rico or in China. For purposes of the U.S., both entities are treated as the same, and they are subject to the same international tax regime that was approved with the tax reform. Okay, but in Puerto Rico, that entity is protected by the U.S. constitutions and by the U.S. law. It uses the same banking system. It uses the same currency. So those advantages that are not specifically tax-wise, they are a big advantage of having a business in Puerto Rico rather than any other foreign jurisdiction.
Is there a difference from a tax perspective if you work in Puerto Rico or you work in Louisiana or Florida?
From a tax perspective, definitely yes, because an entity that is created in Puerto Rico to do business in Puerto Rico, let's say a manufacturing plant, that you set up a Puerto Rico corporation and that Puerto Rico corporation engaged in manufacturing in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico will give you a 4% flat tax, meaning instead of the 30-something tax rate that individuals face in the U.S., in Puerto Rico, you will be subject to a 4% tax. Actually, even with the reduction that the U.S. corporations had with the tax reform, that their tax rate dropped down to 21%, still Puerto Rico plays a better advantage because it's just a 4% tax. And there's no tax on distributions. So as long as you could have the earnings and profits being generated in Puerto Rico, the only tax aspect that operation will have will be that 4% tax. And that's a big difference when you compare, for example, a manufacturing plant in Puerto Rico with any state in the mainland.
So getting back to this 2017 Tax Act, have you seen any amendments or anything that's being proposed in Congress that can potentially change that or at least provide some equilibrium?
Yeah, actually, the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress presented Bill 6648, which is presented by some Democrats, congressmen, and basically is providing for an exception from this GILTI and this BEAT specifically to the U.S. possessions, to entities or to corporations that are organized and working in the business in the U.S. possession. So that will be a big differentiator when we compare an entity in Puerto Rico with another entity in any other foreign jurisdiction. And it is not only for Puerto Rico, it's provided to any U.S. possession or any U.S. territory, like, for example, the USVI as well.
Yeah, I think everybody today is really concerned about bringing manufacturing back to America, and Puerto Rico has an ideal, position to help. And I guess what you just mentioned, for people that don't know anything about taxes in Puerto Rico, do they pay do they pay federal taxes in Puerto Rico? How do state taxes? How does that work?
Yeah, no, as I mentioned, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, but we Puerto Rico residents don't pay federal taxes on their Puerto Rico source of income. So, for example, I'm employed by Kevane Grant Thornton. My compensation is from Puerto Rico sources because I'm providing services here in Puerto Rico. So all of that income, it doesn't have to be included in a federal tax return, even though I'm a U.S. citizen. That's the only exclusion that U.S. citizens have in order not to pay federal taxes on their income. It's the income that they earn in Puerto Rico when they are a Puerto Rico resident. So you have to move to Puerto Rico to enjoy that incentive. That's how, for example, probably you have heard about Act 22, which is the incentives for the new residents. And it's basically based on that cornerstone, that if you become a Puerto Rico resident, the Puerto Rico source of income is exempt from federal taxation. So Puerto Rico can entertain that to provide some incentives like they do with respect to Act 22.
And I know that before the COVID, Act 22 has been a very, very successful program, with hundreds of people moving to Puerto Rico. Do you know the recent numbers on how many people have come to Puerto Rico?
It has already surpassed 2,000 persons that have moved to Puerto Rico and from all over the mainland.
And so there was just recently an Act 60 passed.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Act 60 is now we have what it's called the Puerto Rico Incentives Code. All of these acts, Act 20 and Act 22, Act 73, which is the one for the manufacturing plants, all of those were amended and they are now part of the Incentives Code. So instead of having Act 22, now we have a chapter for individuals. And that covers the new residents, that covers also another incentive for physicians here in Puerto Rico. If they provide medicine services here in Puerto Rico, they enjoy also a 4% tax. And if they engage also in telemedicine to the U.S. or whatever export destination, they also enjoy a 4% tax. Instead of having Act 20, now we have an export activities chapter as well. And that's how, all of the incentives ended up in this incentive code, which is Act 60, and it was approved in mid-summer of last year.
Quick summary on what that incentive would be for manufacturing today, the way the Act is written.
Yeah, it will provide a 4% tax on the net income that the manufacturing plant engaged in Puerto Rico. It will also have a 75% exemption on property taxes and a 50% exemption on the rest of the municipal taxes. We have a municipal tax regime here in Puerto Rico as well, but this act will provide you a 50% exemption as well. Any royalties to be paid outside of Puerto Rico, instead of having the normal 29% reduction withholding, it will be a 12% withholding. And on top of that, we have also some tax credits for R&D activities, research and development, that any research and development that manufacturing plant engaged here in Puerto Rico will be subject to a tax credit that may be up to 50% of the amount incurred. And that credit, you can sell that in the secondary market, and that sale will be completely exempt as well.
In all of the different tax incentives that are being proposed and offered by Puerto Rico, is there any one in particular that you're seeing a lot of demand for or interest in?
We have seen also a lot of interest with opportunity zones. Puerto Rico is part of the opportunity zones regime that we have in the U.S. However, Puerto Rico provides an additional incentives for opportunity zones, not only for the investor that can defer the taxation on the capital gain that invests in the opportunity zone, but also Puerto Rico, if that opportunity zone project in the island engage in certain projects, it will have an additional incentive, which will be an 18.5% of income tax rate instead of the 30-something that we have, and also an additional tax credit. And those projects has to be real estate related. Like we also have for tourism projects here in Puerto Rico, that 4% tax that we have been discussing, that we have also for manufacturing. But on top of that, the investment that you have to make in the project can also be qualified for a tax credit that may be either a 30% of the investment or a 40% of the investment.
Oh, that's amazing. So just to use an example on, let's say, a proposed $100 million hotel project.
Out of the 100 million investment, you have 30 million of tax credit. the first 10%, which is 3 million, you're gonna get that in 2020 once you secure financing. In my example, so you have the rest of the credit is 27 millions. 30% of that, which is a 9 million, you're gonna get that in 2021 when you receive your first paying guest, and the remaining 9 millions in 2022, the second year thereafter, and the rest, the last installment of 90 million, you're gonna get that in 2023. Again, those credits can be sold in the secondary market, and it provides an immediate return to the investor. They typically sell around 90%. So, for example, from that 30 million credit, you can get back 27 million tax-free.
Wish you the best of luck. I know that these are really challenging times for everybody, and Puerto Rico, more than most, has had lots of trials and tribulations over the last couple of years. Yeah. So I want you to be safe, Francisco, and thank you so much for spending some time with us.
My pleasure. Stay healthy, Adam. Thank you.
Thank you.